The Germanic first or given name Richard derives from German, French, and English Rick, and hard, and it therefore means powerful leader. Nicknames include Dick, Dickie, Rich, Richie, Rick, Ricky, and others. Richard is a common name in many Germanic languages, including English, German, Norwegian, Danish, Swedish, Icelandic, and Dutch. People named Richard. Rulers and aristocrats Richard, Duke of Burgundy Richard I, Duke of Normandy, Richard II, Duke of Normandy, son of Richard I of Normandy, Richard I of Capua, King of Capua and Count of Aversa, Richard Fitzgilbert, Norman lord involved in the conquest of England, Richard I of England or Richard the Lionheart, Richard, 1st Earl of Cornwall, elected King of Germany, Richard de Clare, 6th Earl of Gloucester, Richard A.G. de Burgh, 2nd Earl of Ulster, Richard Orsini, Count Palatine of Cephalonia and Zakynthos, Count of Grosvenor, Bailey of Acae, Richard Fitzalan, 10th Earl of Arundel. English military leader, Richard Fitzalan, 11th Earl of Arundel, English military commander, Richard II of England, Richard Neville, 5th Earl of Salisbury, Yorkist leader in the Wars of the Roses, Richard of York, 3rd Duke of York, a principal participant in the Wars of the Roses, Richard Neville, 16th Earl of Warwick, wealthy English magnate and major protagonist in the Wars of the Roses, Richard III of England, Richard of Shrewsbury, 1st Duke of York, who would have been Richard IV of England if he had lived, Richard Boyle, 1st Earl of Burlington, Lord High Treasurer of Ireland and A. Cavalier, Richard Jones, 1st Earl of Ranelagh, Irish peer, and politician both in the Parliaments of England and Ireland, Richard Savage, 4th Earl Rivers, soldier and noted rake, Richard Boyle, 3rd Earl of Burlington, instrumental in the revival of Palladian architecture, Richard Grenville Temple, 2nd Earl Temple, British politician and associate and brother-in-law of William Pitt, Richard Temple Nugent Bridges Chandos Grenville, 2nd Duke of Buckingham and Chandos, noted for squandering his great wealth, Richard Temple Nugent Bridges Chandos Grenville, 3rd Duke of Buckingham and Chandos, British soldier, politician and administrator, Richard Wellesley, 1st Marquis Wellesley, Anglo-Irish Governor-General of India. Foreign Secretary in the British Cabinet and Lord Lieutenant of Ireland, brother of the 1st Duke of Wellington. In politics and government Richard Lackland, one of the founders of the British Commonwealth Party and the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, Richard Keith Dick Armey, American politician, former member of the U.S. House of Representatives from Texas's 26th Congressional District. Richard Dick Cheney, Vice President of the United States under George W. Bush, Richard Clarence Dick Clark, former Senator from Iowa, Richard Court, Australian politician, former Premier of Western Australia, Richard Cromwell, son of Oliver Cromwell, and his successor as Lord Protector of England, Richard J. Daley, Mayor of Chicago, Richard M. Daley, American former state senator and Mayor of Chicago, son of Richard J. Daley, Richard Hatfield, Canadian politician, Premier of New Brunswick, Richard Johnson, President of the Irish High Court, Richard Mentor Johnson, 9th Vice President of the United States, serving in the administration of Martin Van Buren. Richard Dick Lugar, former Senator from Indiana, Richard Nixon, only President of the United States to resign from office, Richard Rush, United States Attorney General and Secretary of the Treasury, Richard Stockton United States Senator from New Jersey. Business people Richard L. Block, American investor, real estate developer, banker, and philanthropist. Richard Branson, British businessman and founder of the Virgin Group of Companies, Richard DeVos, American businessman and co-founder of Amway, Richard Jacobs, real estate businessman and owner of the Cleveland Indians baseball team, Richard Rawlings, star of American television show Fast and Loud, owner of Gas Monkey Garage, Gas Monkey Bar and Grill and Gas Monkey Live, Richard Velazquez, PepsiCo executive and first automotive designer at Porsche AG of Puerto Rican descent, Richard Warren Sears, co-founder of Sears, Roebuck and Company, and considered a promotional genius. Religious figures Saint Richard, Richard Baxter English Puritan church leader, poet, hymn writer. Richard of Dover, Benedictine monk and Archbishop of Canterbury. Richard Folkes, Bishop of Exeter, Bath and Wells, Durham, and Winchester, Lord Privy Seal, and founder of Corpus Christi College, Oxford. And music equals. Composers: Richard D. James, British composer and electronic musician, records music as Effects Twin, among other monikers. Richard Strauss, German composer and conductor. Richard Wagner, German composer, writer, conductor and theatre director. Singers and musicians: Richard Big Daddy Rich Anderson, lead vocalist for American red dirt metal band Texas Hippie Coalition. Richard Ashcroft, former singer with The Verve. Richard Butler, lead singer of the Psychedelic Furs. Richard Carpenter, one half of the Carpenters. Richard Henschel, main composer, guitarist and keyboardist of Haken. Richard Manuel, pianist and vocalist of the band. Richard Wayne Penniman, known as Little Richard, American rock and roll singer. Ringo Starr, real name Richard Starkey, drummer of the Beatles. Richard Wright, keyboard player for Pink Floyd. Actors: Richard Dean Anderson, American actor. Richard Armitage, English actor. Richard Attenborough, English actor, director, producer and entrepreneur. Richard A. Ode, English comedian, actor, writer and director. Richard Belzer, American actor, author, and stand-up comedian. Richard Burbage, English actor and theatre owner. Richard Burton, Welsh actor. Richard Alva Dick Cavett, American television talk show host. Richard Chamberlain, American actor. Richard Igstaff Dick Clark was an American radio and television personality. Richard Curtis, British screenwriter, music producer, actor and film director. One of Britain's most successful comedy screenwriters. Richard Dreyfuss, American actor. Richard Gere, American actor. Richard Harris, Irish actor, singer-songwriter, theatrical producer, film director and writer. Richard Jekyll, American actor. Richard Kind, American actor. Richard Madden, Scottish actor. Richard Anthony Cheech Marin, American actor and comedian, known for the comedy duo Cheech and Chong. Richard Pryor, an American stand-up comedian and actor. Richard Roundtree, American actor. Peter Sellers, born Richard Henry Sellers, British actor. Richard Schulfand, American actor and comedian professionally known as Dick Shawn. Richard Simmons, American actor. Richard Simmons, American fitness personality and actor. Richard Speight, Jr. American actor. Richard Wayne Dick Van Dyke is an American actor, comedian, writer, and producer. Explorers: Richard Arnold, American astronaut. Richard Francis Burton, British geographer, explorer, translator, writer, soldier, orientalist, cartographer, ethnologist, spy, linguist, poet, fencer and diplomat. Richard E. Byrd, U.S. Navy Rear Admiral, aviator and explorer. Richard Masters, English sailor, cooper, trader and explorer. Richard Dick Rutkowski, diving medicine pioneer. Military figures: Richard Howe, 1st Earl Howe, British naval commander in the American War of Independence and the French Revolutionary Wars. Richard Taylor, American Civil War Confederate general. Richard Dick Marcinko, U.S. Navy SEAL commander and Vietnam War veteran. Richard Updugoma, 6th commander of the Sri Lanka Army. In sports: Richard Dick Atlese, American hurdler. Richard Dick Alt, American Olympian. Richard Rink Babka, American discus thrower. Richard Dick Baba, American long jumper. Richard Chelimo, Kenyan long distance runner. Richard Dick Davis, American football player. Richard Dick Davis, American football player. Richard Dick Feenk, American football player. Richard Freytag, German ski jumper. Richard Gasket, French tennis player. Rich Houston, American football player. Richard Dick Johnson, Australian touring car driver and team owner. Richard Jordan, American football player. Richard Kilty, English sprinter. Richard Kingy, Australian-New Zealand rugby union player. Richard Krajicek, Dutch professional tennis player, Wimbledon winner. In 1996, Rick Lackman, American football player. Richard Limo, Kenyan long-distance runner. Richard Matilong, Kenyan runner. Richard Midlin, American football player. Richard Niwakar, British long-distance runner. Richard Newland, English cricketer, Richard Petty, former NASCAR driver, Richard Sears, winner of 7 consecutive U.S. tennis championships, Richard Sherman, defensive back for the Seattle Seahawks, Rich Stotter, American football player, Richard Swan, American professional wrestler, Richard Dick Taylor, New Zealand long-distance runner, Richard Thompson, Trinidadian sprinter, Richard Todd, American football player in the NFL, Richard Weich, Dutch footballer who played as midfielder. Scientists Richard Dawkins, English ethologist, evolutionary biologist and author, Richard Feynman, American Nobel Prize-winning physicist, Richard D. James, American mechanician and materials scientist, Richard Leakey, politician, paleoanthropologist and conservationist. Other Richard Osman, Canadian gas station owner who became famous as Dick Osman, Richard Garriott, video game developer and entrepreneur, Richard Huan, Hong Kong model TV host based in the Philippines, Richard Matt, American convicted murderer and prison escapee, Richard Mori, American naturalized Argentine engineer, Richard Sorge, Soviet military intelligence officer, Richard von Hagener, primary organizer of Action T4 Nazi euthanasia program. Cognates transliterations. In Altaic languages Azerbaijani, Ria section Ard, Japanese, a florin a florin c florin 1/4 of florin, Korean, EI squared EA, Turkish, Riyad, Riyat, Raya. In Indo-European languages Germanic, Afrikaans, Rieket, Rijk, Dutch, Rijut, Ricket, Richard, Rick, Icelandic, Rakera degree, Low German, Ri, C, Kurt, Richard, Scandinavian, Ricard, Richard, Ricard, Rakara degree. Latin, Catalan and Occitan, Ricard, French, Richard, pronounced as Richard, Italian, Ricardo, Latin, Richardus, Portuguese, Ricardo, Spanish, Ricardo. Celtic, Breton, Richars, Cornish, Richard, Irish, Risti RD, Ryacard, Scottish Gaelic, Ruisart, Welsh, Riziart. Slavic, Croatian, Ricard, Czech, Richard, Polish, Rizard, Russian, THTHNTH degree N Euro TH Slovene, Ryad, Ukrainian, THNNTH degree N Euro TH. Other, Armenian, O Euro 0 1/4 Euro 0 1/2, Esperanto, Ricardo, Greek, I mail to the first III, Latvian, Riads, Ryads, Lithuanian, Riadas, Persian, O plus or minus AIO terahertz plus or minus O. In Afro-Asiatic languages Arabic, O plus or minus use ho O terahertz plus or minus O Hebrew, K in registered trademark K. In Uralic languages Finnish, Rikard, Hungarian, Richa RD, Sami, Rika. In other languages Basque, Rikard, Chinese, CAA epsilon 3/4. Short forms, Cornish, Hika, Czech, Ra, Dutch, Rise, English, Rick, Rich, Dick, Dickie, Rick, Rick, Estonian, Ryu, Esperanto, Rika Permel Joe, Finnish, Riku, Hungarian, Ritsi, Riksik, Riks, Icelandic, Riki, Latvian, Ria Lithuanian, Ryaka, Polish, Risio, Rysik, Ryar, Portuguese, Rico, Rick, Slovak, Rio, Riako, Riai, Spanish, Ko, Greek, Ioiiii. Pet forms, English, Ricky, 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 Richie, 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 Rich, Hick, Dick, Dickie, Richie, Dickon. References. Meaning of Richard, meaning of Richard. See also, Reichharder, Reichhardis.